Okay, everybody, welcome back to the Your Home podcast. We are going to do this again.
I'm very excited to do it again.
Yeah, we're going to do this again, and we're going to record. This is take 2 of episode 1. We actually recorded this on Tuesday, and, well, we didn't record it. We sat down. We had a great conversation. It was amazing.
Great conversation.
Then, yeah, at the end, we went to stop the recording, and what do you know? Any beginner podcasters out there, hot tip, remember to hit the record button. Oh, and we were going to do this.
Yeah.
Let's get our timer going. So, okay, everybody. Well, thanks for tuning in. Welcome back. The Your Home podcast, the #1 podcast for first-time home buyers on the planet.
Where you are home.
You are home with the Your Home podcast. So, episode 1, thought we would get into an introduction. So, I'm going to introduce myself. I'm Gerald Hansen. I am a mortgage broker and been in the mortgage business for about 9 years. Started out in 2014, and as of a few years ago, we started our own mortgage brokerage. Before that, been in sales since I was about 18 years old. And as of about a year ago, we started creating content for first-time home buyers and just on real estate education about a year ago. And then this year we decided we'd get into something a little bit more detailed with the podcast. So that's me. And then I'll let Andrew introduce himself.
Yeah. I'm my name's Andrew D'Amato. I've been working with Gerald here for quite a while. I actually just had my 8-year anniversary of getting started in mortgage yesterday.
Hey, happy anniversary.
Yep. February 2nd. Groundhog Day.
Clap it up for Mr. D'Amato there.
Appreciate
nice
that.
round of applause.
Yeah, started on Groundhog's Day in 2015, and, just been hacking away at it ever since.
Nice.
Yeah. But yeah, it's really great. I mean, I love doing mortgage. I've always been pretty good with sales and helping people out. And, there's something about doing mortgage that's just really special on the sales side. It means a lot to the people you work with. It's usually, the biggest transaction that they have to deal with in their lives. And, being able to make that process easy and simple or at least as simple as it can be. And, getting them into a new home is it's really rewarding. So, super excited that we're getting started here with the podcast. We got a lot of great knowledge to share with people and help them achieve, home ownership as well.
So that kind of rolls right into why should people be tuning in? What are you going to get from sitting with us for this, half hour? What should the viewers and listeners expect to get from the Your Home podcast?
Yeah. I mean, I think our main, one of our main goals here is just to, help people understand the process and, increase their financial literacy, especially with, related to real estate and mortgage. And then also, too, I mean, we're going to be talking about a lot of different topics going on in the industry and in the real estate market. So going to be a lot of value. Going to have a lot of fun.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Hopefully it's you like listen to us talk about a subject that you're interested in. One of the things about this show that's going to be really unique is this is coming from a different perspective. A lot of the content that's out there, related to real estate, it's coming from seasoned investors with big real estate portfolios or real estate agents. This is going to be very unique coming from the perspective of mortgage brokers. So, and it's very important because this is going to be a lot of people, I'll say, understand, hey, you can make money in real estate. It's a good investment. People want to own homes. So the what is pretty much covered. And so you've got a lot of people out there that talk about real estate in general, but from the perspective that we share with you, it really gets down to the how. How are you going to do this? Because the money is going to be the thing that's going to solve a lot of those problems and answer a lot of those questions. So for us as the people that are going to help with and you'll be able to work with on the financing, it really gets you into, okay, how are you going to get started in real estate? How is the process going to work as far as securing those funds to then start buying properties? And it's really going to be focused on getting you in the door on your first property and then what you can do from there.
Yeah. Yeah. No, 100%. I mean, you could find the house of your dreams, but if you don't know how you're going to get the money to pay for it, it's going to be a problem.
Yeah. Because 99% of people, they don't have the cash. So they're talking to someone like us, a loan officer or a mortgage broker. So for today's episode, that's really where we're going to start. We're going to start with basically what are the first steps to buying a home. And, there's a lot of steps involved, but we're going to really focus on that first part of the journey, the first step. So what would you say? I mean, what would we say is the first step to buying a home?
Well, I would say the first step is really a conversation with yourself. The decision.
Ooh, the decision.
Right? The decision that you want to buy a home. Is it a smart decision for you to buy a home? Do you even want to own a home? Is it the right time for you to buy a home? If you're going to buy a home, what home's it going to be? Where are you going to buy it? There are a lot of factors to consider. And I think really with it, kind of a good start is, who really wants to be buying a home, right?
Yeah. It's not for everybody.
Right.
It really is.
There's different types of people who buy homes for different types of reasons, right? I mean, obviously you have like investors who are buying real estate purely for like the financial gain of it, and they're not even living in the home. And then you have people who are first-time home buyers buying their primary residence, who want it to be like a long-term purchase and a long-term move. But then there's also people who are kind of trying to do it short-term too, right? Buy something for a couple years and then move into something else later. So, we talk to tons of people all the time about buying homes. It's, kind of part of our job. Talk to, I don't know, a couple hundred people a month, maybe.
350 people in the last 2 weeks.
Right.
Checking the dashboard this morning.
So you get it, and doing this over, multiple years, right? You get it. You hear a lot of the same things from people, as far as why they're calling you, why they're reaching out, why they want to get pre-approved, why they want to buy, and I think that a lot of people would think that maybe it's the biggest aspect of it is financial, but really, I would say the number one thing I hear when people call in is they say, I want to buy a home because I don't want to pay rent anymore, and I want a place that's my own.
Yeah. Sick and tired of paying the landlord's mortgage.
Right. But the emphasis on it is really, I want to buy a place that's my own.
Right.
And I think there really is a big factor in it for people. If you've been renting for a while, there's some, a lot of times when you rent, you got to move around a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I personally hate moving. Huge pain. And having a place that's your own and has a little more stability is a big factor for a lot of people.
Right. So when we look at it, it's okay, you're making the decision, should you buy a house? And then the alternative is, okay, should I rent? And so I kind of look at that in the breakdown of that. Okay, what are the benefits of owning a home? And a majority of people, hey, they're going to look at and talk about the financial benefits of it, but we know that there's a lot more to it than that. A lot of people think about, okay, yeah, you're going to not be wasting money, throwing it away on rent. You're going to have something of your own. That's a huge portion of it. But, listing down the benefits, there's a lot of them aside from the financial, but let's dive into the financial side of it. Cause I think that's the sexy part, the money, right?
Right.
Okay. You're going to buy a home and you're going to have equity. You're going to be, you're going to have millions of dollars because you own your home instead of rent. And one of the really interesting statistics that just goes to show just strictly on the financial side, this was pretty mind blowing. The average net worth of a homeowner versus the average net worth of a renter. We have 40 times higher average net worth for a homeowner at 225,000 versus the net worth of a renter at 6,300. So now we're talking big bucks right there. 225,000 versus 6,300, 40 times higher net worth. So let's get into how does that work? How come a homeowner, what is it that goes into owning a home that makes you 40 times wealthier than somebody who's renting?
Well, yeah, I mean, there's pretty much two aspects on it, right? I mean, there's the equity piece, and then there's also the appreciation piece, right? So, obviously when you're paying your mortgage, you're paying a portion of that payment towards, owning the house over time, right? If you're on a 30-year mortgage, there's a certain portion of every payment that's going to be going towards, your ownership in the house and building that equity. And the other factor of it is appreciation, right? So, historically, in like a national average on real estate appreciation is like 3 to 4% per year, right? Now that's an average, and
Right.
sometimes you're going to get higher, sometimes you're going to get lower. Like in 2020, 2021, a lot of markets were seeing 10, 15, 20% appreciation, which was super accelerated. And, that's calmed down a bit, but still over the long term, that's where it averages out. If you have a house that's a $400,000 house, right? And you're at 4% appreciation on it per year. After 3 years, that house is going to be worth $450,000.
That's pretty nice.
Yeah, that's pretty nice. Over 5 years, $486,000. Over 10 years, $592,000.
Boom, that's a big number. That's $192,000 in equity for what did you have to do for that?
That's just paying your mortgage for 10 years.
Well, that's just owning the house.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
you do have to pay your mortgage. Let's make that very clear. Yeah, obviously it's not exactly nothing, but that appreciation is something that you don't have. There's not effort that's going in. You're not making, more investment. It's just that's what happens with just naturally, hey, in the neighborhood, other people coming in and buying, it's just, you've seen historically over 30, 50 years, it's on average 4%. So over 10 years, you're getting into $192,000 in just equity from appreciation.
Right.
Now, after 10 years, you've also paid down your
loan
mortgage.
balance. Right. The loan balance is going to go down too. And I think, after 10 years, you're probably going to owe around like $330,000, something like that. So you're probably looking at about a spread of $250,000 or so after 10 years on
Wow.
a 30-year fixed rate. Now it obviously depends on your interest rate too. That these are kind of rough ballpark numbers, but yeah, it's pretty incredible, right? And the thing with it for a lot of people that makes it simpler, kind of makes it makes it make sense is you're going to have a housing payment regardless, right? If you don't own a house, you're going to rent, right? So if you're paying $2,000 a month over 10 years, you're spending $240,000. You're never going to see anything.
Right. Yeah. At the end of that 10 years, when you decide, hey, I want to move to a different place and move out of that rental, you know what happens? You get a bill. They say, hey, you got to change your carpets and paint your walls. You left a trash bag on the floor. We're charging you $1,000 extra. So you get a bill when you move out of
Right.
your rental. After 10 years of paying your rent on time, being a good tenant, you get a bill. What kind of game is that they're playing? No appreciation for you as the tenant, paying that rent every month, putting money in the landlord's pocket.
Don't forget about those pet fees too.
Don't forget about Right.
Yeah. My every month when I pay my mortgage, they've never asked me for a pet fee additional, so that's nice too for the animal lovers out there.
So yeah.
But yeah, so inherently like that's a good thing. Now, there's a lot of people out there that are concerned, well, everybody has a memory of, the 2008 housing crash and that being a really bad situation for homeowners. And it was kind of the inverse of some of the math we just did, which was due to a multitude of factors. of people being underwater on their mortgages. But the really good thing with today is that after 2008, I mean, there was like tons of regulations added to mortgages for the better, for the better financial stability of the housing market as a country and for individuals and all across the board. So the likelihood of that situation happening again is much less.
Right. And I guess that's good to look at the possible downside, the financial downside
yeah, you
of
need to
owning.
look at the downside.
Yeah,
I
which
mean, there's
is
pros to renting. I
right.
mean, it comes down to who you are and what your circumstances are, which I think we're going to get into a little bit more. But
So, the financial downsides being a lot of times your mortgage payment can be more expensive than your rent payment. That may be a sort of a myth that I guess on either side. It depends on how much the rent is. It depends on how much the mortgages are or the home prices are in your market. It can vary. Sometimes rent will be more expensive in some markets. Sometimes owning a home on your monthly payment can be more expensive. Obviously, when you own a home, maintenance cost is 100% on you versus when you rent, you're going to be able to call up the landlord and say, hey, change my light bulb.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, and that stuff can kind of creep up on you. So, I mean, if you're thinking about buying, these are things you have to consider, right?
Right.
I think that the most important thing for people who are buying is that they're comfortable with the payment, right? I mean, you have to take a good hard look at your budget, make sure that, the new mortgage payment that you are, signing up for is going to be something that works with your, with your income and with your expenses and with your lifestyle.
And I think that's important because a lot of people have this idea that if property values drop, that's not great if property values drop, but there's a lot of people that have this idea that if property values drop, you're going to go into foreclosure and it's going to create this entire domino effect that's going to crash the entire economy and it would be some big disaster. Obviously, owing more on an asset than it's worth is not great, but that doesn't necessarily mean if you owe more on the home than it's worth. And this is very rare that this happens. This was isolated. We had a lot of that back in 2008. But right now, let's say there's a lot of people who are talking about a possibility of a market crash. The data does not support that at all. So this is just an entirely sort of made up thing by people who aren't educated. The data does not support anything about a market crash. But let's just pretend for a second that we did have a 10% or 20% drop in property values. That in and of itself does not necessarily mean you're going into foreclosure. If you can't make your payment, then you have a problem. So that's why we talk about, hey, as long as you're comfortable with the monthly payment, the boogeyman and monster hiding in the closet of, the market is going to crash and property values are going to come down, don't really have that big of an effect on you if you can make that monthly payment. If you feel that you have secure employment, steady income, then you don't really have as much to be worried about with these fluctuations in property values.
Yeah. I mean, your equity position. I mean, when you own a house, your equity position is going to shift over time, right? But like you said, I mean, it really is only a factor when you need to sell, right? And and that is one of the things with as far as for some people it is a downside to owning versus renting is you lose flexibility, right? When you own something, you're making a bigger commitment, right? You have to understand that that's the case, right? You're obligated to be paying this mortgage, and if for some reason you were underwater on it, right, you're going to be fine, but you just need to be able to keep paying that mortgage until kind of the terms flip. But the other piece is being underwater on it. I mean, most of the time you're still going to be able to get out of it because you put money down on the front end, right? I mean, if you put 5% down on the front end and you've been living there for 3 years and something happens with property values and it goes down, it'd have to go down a lot for you to be truly underwater to where you can't sell it to pay the mortgage on it, right? But, I mean, these are, just things you have to consider, but it's really nothing to be scared of because, another great option is, being the landlord, right? If something comes up and you don't want to pay that mortgage anymore, you could move out, go rent somewhere else, and then rent out that property until it's a better time to sell.
Right.
So there are options if you run into a tough situation like that. But fundamentally, you want to make sure you're financially stable on the income side with your employment, and obviously having some cash reserves is always good too, in case something comes up.
Right. The downside is there, and I feel like we're kind of playing it up just to, okay, we'll play devil's advocate against ourselves. Like, okay, let's just say all of this, because there's a lot of information out there, and there's a lot of people, whether it's in the media or, on mainstream media or on social media, or, hey, my cousin said the market's going to crash. There's a lot of information out there that just is simply not supported. It's not substantiated by any of the data right now. And there's a lot of people sort of conflating what's happening right now and drawing ties to, what happened when, what we all lived through, which was a huge housing market crash that had, a big effect on the whole economy and, across the world. And the main thing is, okay, property values are going up. Property values are, they're shooting up. They're rising at a rapid rate.
Looks like a bubble.
So I was saying, what a lot of people are thinking, hey, it's a bubble, just because during COVID prices were going up so quickly. So that's like the obvious thing. You don't have to be
right.
You don't have to be super informed or smart to be cynical and say, oh, what goes up must come down. It's a bubble. And even a broken clock is right twice a day. So, you might get.
Yeah.
And a lot of those people are validated because there are some markets in the country that
I think
experience a little bit more price fluctuation and volatility than others.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think it's really important to distinguish, the difference between, the housing crisis that is going on now versus, the actual housing crisis that we had in 2008. And in 2008, I mean, the issue was people were foreclosing and they were putting loans that were, risky and not well qualified or documented for the customers, and put people in a really bad situation. And then it was, all tipped the scale on foreclosures and everything like that. But, it was interesting because there was a lot of people saying that there was going to be a property drops, like this year and last year, because of there was going to be a bunch of foreclosures. People who, due to COVID and people not being able to work, there was going to be this big wave of foreclosures that was coming, and that was going to increase inventory and then bring prices down. And sure enough, I was just reading something yesterday, actually, that was saying that that's just totally not the case. Right now, foreclosures are actually
fake news.
Are actually looking pretty good, in the sense there's not a lot of them, and it's year over year. There's less foreclosures than there were at the end of last year, and it's a very small normal percentage. But it's which totally makes sense to me. I mean, the whole time I was never thinking there was going to be mass foreclosures that was going to rock the market like some people were predicting. I mean, reason being, all the people who owned homes refinanced down to some of the lowest rates that have ever had. So
and benefited from, historically high rates of appreciation. So if there is something that comes up, the reason that you run into an issue financially with owning a home is if you're in a position where you can't make that mortgage payment. It's a great point that even if something happens, God forbid, where you lose a source of income, your only source of income, it's a great point that you can move out, put a tenant in there, have a tenant pay your mortgage. There's a lot of options that you would have if you run into a hairy situation where you're not able to pay your mortgage. But for the most part,
today the housing crisis is affordability, and there not being enough homes. There's more buyers. I mean, demand is high. It's still high, even with the rates being high.
And the affordability issue is a direct result of there not being enough homes. So because there's, I would agree. The issue is affordability, and the issue is a lack of inventory. So there just simply aren't enough homes right now to meet the demand of the population. There's over the next 10 years, there's going to be another 20 million baby boomers, and we've already got, so that'll put us at like 75 million baby boomers. We're at like 85 million or so roughly on millennials. So and then there was an issue with houses not being built. So there, right now at this present moment in the market, there is, just on basic supply and demand, there is a really high demand for homes just because of the population, and there's a low supply. So because of that, we're going to see prices continue to rise. And we do not have the same issue that we had, which in 2008, we had just a massive oversupply of homes, which was causing a lot of people to just go out. And because of the way that the mortgages were at that time, people could go out, and you see, like on The Big Short, the guy sitting there talking to that stripper, and she's like, "So you mean my mortgages are going to go up?" And it's like, "What do you mean mortgages?" She's like, "Yeah, I have 2 mortgages." He's like, "You have a second mortgage?" She's like, "Yeah, I have a second mortgage, and I have 5 houses." So she's got 10 mortgages on 5 houses, and
Yeah.
I guess
It was easy then.
it was an issue, So that was different. Right now, as far as the mortgage industry goes, it's much more. It's very highly regulated. It's a lot different than it was before.
Definitely.
So some of that downside, a lot of that downside risk financially just is not what it used to be. It's not there. Homeowners right now, they have a lot of equity. They're very well qualified. So as far as all the scare about another crash, let's put that to bed right here, right now on the Your Home podcast. We're dispelling the rumors. We're getting rid of it. There's no issues as far as a market crash, as far as foreclosures. You heard it here first, people.
The people that own their homes right now are in really, really great spots. The biggest winners of 2020 and 2021 and the lowest rates were the people who already own their homes. The people who were trying to get new homes, the guy putting 3% down, 5% down, those were the people that were in trouble. Just because there was so much demand, it was tough for them to get into properties. Which is why right now it's, as the rates went up, because they basically, we were at like, high 2s, low 3s in 2020 and 2021, and now we're at, around 6%. Right. So they've gone up, they basically doubled, a little more than doubled. And that weeded out a lot of buyers in the market, kind of slowed demand, in 2022 and still kind of in that spot right now. But so it's been easier for people to get into contract, which is a good thing, because in 2020 and 2021, it was very difficult for people to get offers accepted. You'd pre-approve somebody and they'd go out and start shopping. They'd put 10 offers in, and every single one of them had 10 other offers. And if they weren't putting 20% down conventional, or they weren't buying in cash, it was really tough for them to get the house. Flip side on it now, there's still demand. I mean, there's still multiple offer situations, but you're not going up against 10 or 15 other people in most cases.
Right.
It's kind of a more normal market on that end, which is good. On the downside of it, your starting payment's going to be higher because you're at a higher rate, but that is the thing with a mortgage is, you use the mortgage to buy the asset, right? And then you can change the mortgage multiple times throughout the process. I mean, most people refinance at least one time during the time of their loan. So, if you get the house now and you're at a 6% rate or a 6.5% rate, when rates get down to 4 or 5%, you're going to be able to refinance, shave a couple $100 off that payment, and then, you're in the house, right?
Right.
And you're in a good spot.
So because we're getting into, which is important as far as the decision-making process, to understand the state of the market right now.
We're getting into the weeds a little bit.
We're getting into the weeds because it's easy to tail off into, okay, hey, what's going on in the current market?
Right.
Because, like I said, we had 350 customers in the past, 2 weeks. So our brains are really, we're thinking. I've got 2 customers, this morning trying to put offers in on the same house. 2 different clients, different realtors, same house, that the offer's going in on. So, there's a lot going on right now in the current market, which is important in your decision-making process. But just in general, regardless of what's going on in any particular market, looking at taking a step back, zooming out, and looking at the big picture. What are the benefits of owning a home that will go into making your decision? So the financial side of it, you've got, the net worth. I mean, I think that pretty much sums it up. You've got 40 times greater net worth of a homeowner versus somebody who's a renter. So as far as the financial side goes, we touched on some of the possible downsides, which truly we don't see a lot of potential risk right now in owning as far as, the financial risk. It's going to be very isolated as far as the possible downside. So financially, we've touched on that, the, appreciation, loan pay down. We won't dig in too much more into, there's some tax benefits and everything. But aside from the financial benefits and the financial side of the decision-making factor, let's dive into what are some of the other areas, because we know people like to talk about the money side of it, but at the end of the day, that's not what people refer to when you say, hey, what do you like about being a homeowner? That's not what people don't talk about the financial side.
Yeah. I mean, especially for someone who's a first-time home buyer, buying a primary residence. I mean, it's so much more goes into it being the right time for you to buy than the market. You don't always get to pick, if you're living in a 3-bedroom townhouse and you got 4 kids and you've been saving up for the down payment, trying to purchase and trying to go to the next step for your family because your townhouse is too small, you might not be able to wait around a couple more years for rates to lower, right? You're going to want to buy today. So, and you could totally do that. And that's kind of what the positive is on it, right? I mean, it's just purely the financial end of it, and what the real estate market is not always the main factor for people as far as making the decision to buy today. So that's what we find.
Let's rattle them off, and then we'll go. Let's rattle off the community ties.
Yeah.
Increased privacy, stability, personal expression. Right, you can paint your walls.
Yeah, you can renovate the property, make it your own.
So community ties, right? We talk about, hey, what school district do you want to be in? Where do you want your kids to grow up? I mean, that's a really big part of it. One of the top, I would say, driving factors for a lot of people, especially young families, is, hey, you want to be a part of this community, and when you own a home in the community, you're tied to it. You're invested. You're going to make sure that you're taking care of your property. And when other people in the community, they're also homeowners, you expect the same out of them. So when you've got a community that is made up of, hey, we're all in this, we're all financially invested, we've got skin in the game here.
Yep.
You see a much better sort of overall result in those neighborhoods and developments.
Yeah, no, totally. I mean, another big thing for people, I think, is privacy. The mortgage company is, they're not going to come check in on the property quite as much as a landlord might.
Yeah. You got any pets in there?
Yeah. You don't really have to deal with anything like that, which is good. And, especially I think the stability is a big piece for people. I mean, especially if you're kind of in the family side of your life, right? Not having to move kind of house to house or worry about when your lease is up. This is your place, and you get to decide on your own terms, when you want to move somewhere else.
Right.
And the stability thing is a big piece on it, right? I mean, and a lot of people, I think, what is it, like 7 years? I think that the average
that you're going to keep the mortgage, and
right.
the home is tied to that as well. Keeping the home, keeping the mortgage. Mm-hmm. But I think there's a small 97% of people are keeping, the home for that amount of time. 99% of people are going to at least refinance the mortgage. So if you're in that 2% that's going to keep keep the home, you're going to definitely be doing something refinancing the mortgage.
Right. Yeah, but
that figure's growing. It's getting closer to like 10 years and everything. So
yeah. I mean, Yeah, I mean, I think the stability piece is a big thing for people. Obviously, too. When you're in a fixed rate mortgage, your payment is not going to increase. You're not dealing with rent increases. Situations like that. I mean, your property taxes might go up. Well, they will go up,
Yeah.
but it's kind of marginal compared to finding out you're re-signing your lease and they're jacking it up $100 every time you re-sign, or $200 every time you re-sign. So there's definitely a big value for people on that end of things too. But really, I think a bigger question is like, as far as even just getting started, okay, you've decided you want to buy a home because you're comparing it to renting, and, you want to, go up to the next level on that, right, and be an owner. How do you even, like, where do you even start? Like, how do you even figure out where you want to live? What factors go into people on that?
For me, for everybody, it's going to be different. I mean, obviously, I look at, hey, I want to live in an area where I've got my family. I want to be close to the office, not have a huge commute. I think for like when you were buying, we were talking about, the area that you were moving into, and I was like, stay on the north side, don't go to the south side. I was like, and that was actually, yes, of course, the neighborhoods, I said, the north side of town is, that's where it's at. But we were also looking at, okay, hey, the homes in those areas, they're going to be appreciating more. There's more developments going on in the area. They're putting a new restaurant here. So,
Yeah.
when you see some of those, when you see those big money, hedge funds and big developers coming in and they're spending money in the neighborhood, it's like, well, I'll put in my little 5% down.
Yeah.
I'll put some money in the pot. I'll put
Right.
25
Well,
G's up to buy a house. If these guys are putting millions and sometimes billions of dollars in,
Yeah.
put up new Marriott hotels and everything, it's like, put your 25K next to theirs.
Yeah.
I mean, they might know a thing or two.
Right. Well, I mean, I think that really is a big factor too, kind of going back to the appreciation piece a little bit is, the 3 to 4%, that's an average, but if you're able to align your primary residence purchase in the right neighborhood or the right, location, you can hit a lot more than that.
Right.
Right. If you buy somewhere on the early side of business development or commercial development that's going to be built nearby, right? I mean, you could be looking at a lot more on that. So if there's a way, really, I think there's a pretty good formula on figuring out where you want to be, and it pretty much comes down to like three things, right? It comes down to location, the size of the home, and your budget.
Right.
Right. Location being, you want to look at what location you want to be in, right? For things like school district, proximity to work, what, commute times, all that kind of stuff, what's being built around that location. I mean, location is a really, really important piece in real estate. I mean, people say it all the time, location, location, location. And it's true, right? Location's huge. The other thing that's a really big factor for people is the size of the home, right? Okay, the location's great, but if I need 3 bedrooms and, I can only afford a 1-bedroom condo here, well, that's not going to work for you either, right?
Yeah.
So you have to take, are you someone who can live in a condo? Are you someone who can live in a townhouse? Do you need a single family, right? And what is, how many bedrooms you need? Just the pure functionality of the, the asset you're buying. And then the third piece is the budget, right? And so, how much can you afford to pay per month, right? Whatever, you can figure out how much of a loan you can, what kind of purchase price of homes you can afford based on how much you can afford per month, right? And going back to the every month of what you can afford and being financially stable and it being a good decision, you need to have a pretty good idea of what your maximum mortgage payment is, and that gives you, the top end of your shopping range.
And that's for you to decide.
Yeah.
A lender can tell you, hey, this is how much you qualify. And we hear it all the time.
Yeah.
Somebody will call in, hey, what are you looking for? What's your budget? What's your price range? And they'll say, how much can I get approved for? What's the maximum I can get approved for? And we kind of have to revisit, hey, that's not the way it works. We want you to give us, hey, what are you looking for to make you comfortable with that every single month, right, making that payment? So then you say, based on that, hey, I'm comfortable paying $2,500 per month. Okay, based on that, you need to start looking at homes in this price range. Versus the other way around, and we just say, "Hey, you qualify for qualify for a $3,500."
It's really
payment.
funny how people answer that question, because you ask them, all right, well, how much can you afford per month? And they go, well, I'm looking for a 3-bedroom with 2 bathrooms and a big yard. Okay, well, what do you want your monthly mortgage payment to be per month? Well, I think that, I'm going to need like a $500,000 house. Okay, how much do you want your monthly mortgage? It's it's something you kind of really got to get it out of them on there, but it's a really, because yeah, like you're saying, I mean, on the loan side of things, I mean, most loan programs, what that you can get qualified for is not always what you want to get qualified for.
Right.
Just because the bank will let you take that loan doesn't mean you should take that size, right? I mean, on most loan programs, or a lot of loan programs, you can go up to like a 50% debt to income ratio, right? Meaning, 50, of your gross income before taxes, your total bills on your credit that you already pay, your car loans, student loans, credit cards, plus the new housing payment can be 50% of your gross income.
So you make 10 grand a month. You've got $500. You've got $1,000 a month in other expenses, car loan, credit cards,
Right.
student loans, $4,000 a month mortgage payment. That's what a lot of lenders and banks will
if
actually
you have high
let you
credit,
get
they'll
approved
let
for.
you get that.
That's
Yeah.
what they'll let you get approved for.
In most cases, and but just because, but do you want to live on that? I mean, if you think about it, if you're at $10,000 a month of income, okay, you're getting $6,500, and then you got $1,000 in other bills. Now you're at $5,500, and then you got a $4,000 mortgage payment, and you're left with
$1,500. So that's not including your utilities. It's not
Right.
including, your food and just
So-
living your life. So there's a purpose for why these programs allow for that. But the point here is you need to decide what mortgage payment you're comfortable with in this process of making a decision, taking a look at your monthly budget and saying, okay, what are my expenses? What am I going to be okay with on a housing payment every month? And maybe and in a lot of cases, there's a disalignment between the price of the home that you're going to be interested in and what that monthly payment's going to be. So what can you do about that? Well, you revisit your budget. You say, okay, what are some expenses I can reduce or possibly eliminate? And aside from that, maybe I'm okay with paying a little bit more than what I initially thought, I'm comfortable with. If I really want that house, okay, can we make it happen?
Right.
Can we stretch it out a little bit? So there's a lot that goes into the decision making of should you buy or should you rent, but it's, one step at a time. You just take a look at these things and you just kind of attack it one step at a time. But, obviously looking into the budget, that's a very important factor, but you have to start with at least knowing your numbers and talking
Right.
to, a mortgage person and getting an idea of, okay, what's the monthly payment going to be? So,
I mean, that brings me to a good question. If you're trying to buy a house and, you're thinking about it, do you call a realtor first or do you call a lender first?
oh, come on, finance first, baby. We're going straight. We're going to you should be going to a lender first. You know why? Because even if you call that realtor, the first thing they're going to do, hey, I want you to talk to a lender. That's what they're going to do. So,
yeah, definitely.
And people are starting to kind of catch wind of, okay, I need to get my financing side sorted out and starting to go, more towards financing first. Consumers are starting to pick up on that. And that is really the first step. And again, we say it's never too early to have that discussion and figure out what you're qualified for, figure out, what your monthly payment would look like, what all the numbers are going to be, monthly payment, cash out of pocket. It's never too early to start that discussion.
Yeah.
It's not a situation where if you call up and you talk to a loan officer, they're going to be putting you through some, machine of an application process and stamping you with a denial. It's just, it's starting out with a conversation that is really there to, educate you and inform you on these really important numbers. Right. So that is,
and really it's going to give you, I mean, it's going to give you the information you need to know what you need to work on. Right. Or
if you're not all the way there, then it'll let you know what you need to work on.
Right. Or just give you the idea of maybe helping you with the decision of should I buy or should I keep renting for right now, right? Because they're going to be able to get you a pretty good idea as far as what you could qualify for on the monthly payment side, how much money you're going to need, and get a little more granular with you on really what it's going to look like for you if you buy today. And yeah, I mean, it's a really important piece of it and being a good decision and finding a property that works for you. I mean, the other thing too is there really isn't much of a point of going and shopping for houses with realtors if you don't know what you can afford or you don't know what you go look at this house, this meets all of my needs, but then you call a lender after you've already gone and looked at the house and 5 other houses just like it, and find out that the payment's going to be $2,000 more than you're okay with paying. Right. That's just kind of wasting your time. So, definitely I would agree with you. I think talking with a lender first is 100% the way to go.
So obviously all of the people who are listening right now are likely leaning towards, as far as the decision goes, they want to buy. But for those people who may be saying, you know what, this doesn't sound like it's for me. I don't want to be in the big leagues.
Well, here's a question for you. Why would you not want to buy?
There's not a lot of answers to that. There's like one or two answers on why you wouldn't want to buy. But the main one is going to be the timeline. You really need to, real estate is long term. And if you are going to be someone who you think you're going to be moving around in the next year or 2 years, then owning a home just may not be the right thing for you, and likely isn't the right thing. If you're going to stay in that house for a long period of time, then you'll have an opportunity to reap the benefits of that appreciation and the loan pay down and, building up that equity. So
how long you got to be there?
2 to 3 years, 2 to 3 years minimum is what I'd say. I mean, personally, I'll say I've owned homes for 2 years and, done all right on them, but you squeak it out there in that second year and, holding on strong, saying I'm not going to sell until my house sells as the most expensive one in the neighborhood. That's how I was able to squeak out of them. But minimum 2 years. If you're going to be less than 2 years, you're just better off renting. So if that's something.
But on the flip side with that though, right? Just because you buy the house doesn't mean selling it, I'd say 2 or 3 years. I mean, that'd be the soonest you'd want to sell it after you buy it to make sure that you come out on top of it. But that doesn't necessarily mean you have to live there for that long, right? Because especially if you're someone kind of in your mid-20s, you're not really kind of the longer term looking for the stability, family building side of things as a buyer, right? I mean, if you're someone who's renting right now with a bunch of different roommates, I definitely did that for a while. I've had 41 roommates, which is
that's a lot.
It's insane. Yeah, it was.
I don't know how you do it.
Well, I don't anymore, but at the time,
you have boarders.
Yeah, I've had a couple boarders, coming in helping some friends out for kind of in between places, but yeah, I mean that that's the thing too. If you get something that's like a condo, right? I mean, if you live there as your primary for a couple years, and then you're someone who you might be moving to a different area, you're not sure you're going to be here for that long. You could always keep it and then rent it out to someone else, and then that helps you build the equity longer to then whenever you are kind of that next level buyer looking for the longer term purchase for stability, right? You have that asset that already has some equity built in there, which you could either liquidate and then use that as a down payment, roll that equity into your next purchase, or keep it as a rental, which obviously the long-term play with being owning real estate investment properties, it's a long-term play, right? That's really where you get the everybody talks about real estate being it's kind of like, oh yeah, I want to own properties and stuff, but like month to month for most investment properties, not super sexy.
Yeah.
Right. It's like it's sexy
on average a few $100s in positive cash flow every month. So it's
there's exceptions to this obviously, and we're not really talking about property flippers or guys who are doing investment properties like full in as a living. There's definitely, that's kind of a different episode, but you as just someone who's buying a primary, the option of keeping it and renting it out is really good if you are kind of in that short-term play, especially if you're someone who does have roommates. How about that? Instead of you going in with 3 of your buddies to go live somewhere and pay someone else's mortgage, what if you own the mortgage and your 2 buddies that live with you are paying you?
The ultimate house hacker.
The ultimate house hacker.
So there's exceptions to basically even when we say, hey, this is a reason that you should not be buying a home, there's an exception to that.
Yeah,
even
if
you are somebody
there's exceptions to everything that we're saying.
There's exceptions to everything. I guess the one area where I'd say maybe where there wouldn't be an exception, if you do not have stability as far as your employment income, then you want to figure that out first. You want to get your act together and make sure that you've got your house in order as far as you've got a stable job, steady income coming in, and you feel good about that, because you don't want to be stressing out about making that mortgage payment because you're worried about losing out on your income. So that's definitely one thing. You want to make sure that as far as your personal financial situation with your income is strong and you feel really confident in it. So if for whatever reason you just say, hey, it's not the right time, or maybe there's something else and you say, hey, I'm going to continue to rent, then I got a hot tip for you. This is a hot tip for any of the people out there, the very few people that have decided after listening to this that they don't want to buy. If you're looking to continue to rent, the number one thing you can start doing right now is to prepare yourself is start making that mortgage payment right now. So if you're paying $2,000 a month in rent and you have for a house in your price range, the monthly mortgage payment would be $2,500. Every month, pay that $2,000 for your rent to your landlord, and then pay the extra $500 to yourself in a separate account. So you will be able to accumulate that extra $500 a month by just making that mortgage payment. Instead of making just that $2,000 rent payment, making that mortgage payment, you'll accumulate that extra savings. And on top of that, you'll get in the routine of paying that $2,500, paying that extra, $500 every month. So when you do go to buy, you're not going to be hit with that payment shock, is what we call it. That's a term is you have payment shock, where somebody goes from a $2,000 rent payment to a $2,500 payment, and they haven't really reconciled their other habits and spending to be able to account for that. So if you are someone that decides that you want to continue to rent, start making that mortgage payment right now. Accumulate that savings. Get used to paying that little higher extra monthly payment. It's going to put you in a better position for when you decide, hey, I'm going to take this step and I'm going to go buy.
Yeah.
That's a hot tip for you.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, that kind of solves multiple. That's hitting two stone birds at the same time, or what?
Getting two birds stoned at the same time.
Right. Yeah.
Isn't that?
Yeah, I think that's what it is. Yeah.
So, So in kind of summing it up, we've got the financial benefits of it. We've got all these other things, ties to the community, the stability. You don't have pet fees. You can do what you want with the property, paint the walls, paint the doors, whatever it is that you can do to add your own sort of personality to it. I sum all of that up into the number one thing when it's making that decision. The real thing that people talk about is the pride of home ownership.
Yeah.
It's a sense of accomplishment. Owning a home, for the most part, everybody looks at as a part of the American dream. Owning your own piece of America, having your land, you've got the freedom to do what you want with that property. There's a real sense of pride and accomplishment that obviously we can't discount, because that's the number one thing that people look at is, hey, I'm a homeowner. I had this, I've accomplished this. I bought my own home. It's a sense of achievement. You get to join that club of having a 40 times greater net worth, right? $225,000 in net worth on average versus $6,000. So you're now a part of that club. It's a sense of status, in a way, of saying, hey, I own a home. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with feeling good.
Yeah. I mean, you definitely. I mean, I remember when I after I bought my place, I almost got excited about paying my mortgage payment.
Right.
When I paid my rent, I would hate it every month. Oh, I got to pay the rent. Oh, I hate paying the rent. And then it's like, now I'm paying myself a little bit.
You're paying yourself a little bit, but it is different.
It doesn't feel as painful when that monthly housing payment comes up.
Right.
Yeah. And I mean, there's definitely a pride of ownership, a status level with it. It makes people feel good.
People always ask you, like, oh, do you rent or do you own? It's nice to be able to say that you own. It's nice to be able to tell people, hey, I just bought a house. And obviously, I'm not saying that you're going around trying to impress people, but the reason you're saying that is because you're proud of yourself. That's a big accomplishment to get to that point where you're in a position in your life. It says a lot about you. It says that you have your act together. You're in a good place. You've got the stability. You've now said, okay, I'm going to make an investment in this community. Just all around, it's going to be something that's going to give you a real, strong feeling of pride in yourself by owning that home and, put you in that other level. So that's a great thing to be able to give to yourself, And it's something that we get to.
Well, and give to your family too, because I
Right.
mean that's one of the biggest pieces with real estate too is the generational wealth that gets passed down. You know, you live in, you know, you buy a place, you live in it until you're, you know, old and gray and whatever, and by then you have the mortgage paid off, and you know you might not even have you know, I don't know. There's all these crazy numbers that you see about people living paycheck to paycheck and how, you know, how large a percentage of America is like pretty much paycheck to paycheck. And, you know, even if you basically kind of live that way your whole life, but you have the mortgage, I mean, that's a big chunk of, you know, that's a big chunk that gets passed down to your kids when the time comes.
Right.
You know, and that can help them buy houses and get themselves set up. And, you know, that's a big factor too. But yeah, I mean, I think right now it's, you know, it's an interesting time, you know, especially everything going on with, you know, like technology and how people get their news and being influenced on financial decisions. And like, I was reading something the other day about Gen Z. And it's like, I think it's like 45% of them have home ownership goals for 2023. I mean, Gen Z is pretty young. 39.5% of them also have a goal to increase their income in 2023. So that's good.
Right.
That's good.
Well, it's
Gotta
great
do that
to
first.
see. Yeah, it's great to see that you know, young kids are looking at their finances. I think it's become just totally apparent to everybody. It's obvious you're not getting this financial education in public schools. You're not even getting it in college.
Yeah, it's a
So
huge-
people are
it's a
going to
huge
other
problem.
people are going to other sources to learn about this stuff because you see, hey, you look around and there's people that are making money. They're making money in real estate. How do you do this stuff?
Right.
And so it's
And
it's great to
I don't
me
know
to
if
see.
I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing, but it's like you'd think there might be a better source that they could get this information from than scrolling on TikTok. But you know, I mean, if you see a video on someone making a bunch of money, you got to do some more research than that. But
Right.
you know, but it's
You got to watch their podcast. Don't just take advice from their short clip of their podcast. Watch the full podcast
yeah.
to get a very thorough breakdown and detailed analysis of the steps.
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
But yeah, the you know, at this point, if you're still looking at, you know, what is it that's going to go into making a decision, I mean, there is more to it, but I think we've done a good job of saying like here's everything that you need to analyze from, you know, not just from like the macro perspective of like the long term and, you know, big picture benefits, but you know, we've talked a good amount about what's going on in the market right now, and been pretty fair, right? We haven't just been skewed towards what obviously benefits us, which is our job is to help people get into homes. We've talked about
I mean, it's
the reasons that people shouldn't buy and how there's many exceptions to those reasons.
Yeah, I mean, it really, I mean, once again, you know, big financial decisions like buying a house, I mean, it comes down to you. I mean,
Yeah.
it comes down to you and what you want to do and what is best for you. And everybody is, you know, there's no straight cookie cutter, you know, this is the right way to spend money. Everybody spends money different. Everybody has different budgets, you know, different incomes and, you know, different family situations. And, you know, you know, the biggest piece is you got to evaluate those things and what is best for you.
Yeah.
Right. And from there, you know, once you've kind of made that decision, I mean, then there's a lot of really easy steps you can take to make it a reality.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, the bottom line is it actually is pretty easy to get approved for a mortgage loan. You know, for some people it's harder than others, but you know, if you have the income, you know, if you check the boxes of you have the income to afford it and you have, you know, some assets to be able to put down or access to assets to put down, I mean, the next steps of it get pretty easy. I mean, you get pre-approved, you know, and with getting pre-approved, I mean, you know, they're taking a look at the income, they're taking a look at your assets, taking a look at the credit, you know, but you can get a pre-approval in a day.
Yeah.
You know, it doesn't take that long to get that piece completed. And from there, you know, then it's working with an agent that's going to help you find the right place.
Right.
You know, once you're in contract, you know, you're closing in a couple weeks. So, you know, if you want to buy, I mean, the thing that definitely holds people back the most is the decision.
Yeah.
You know, figuring out figuring out all the stuff we just talked about. Is it a good decision? You know,
And it's easy to put it off, and it can be a little bit intimidating, but it's really not that it's not that difficult of a process. And so if it's something that you're just thinking about and you think for whatever reason, oh no, I can't do this, I'm not ready, have a conversation with somebody, loan officer, mortgage broker.
Yeah, not your cousin who bought like a year ago, or not, you know, someone. Don't talk to talk to someone who, you know, talk to like a licensed, you know, mortgage broker, you know, lender. I mean, you know, talking to a realtor too. They know a lot of that stuff, and they're gonna, you know, a lot of times they'll be able to point you in the right direction on a lender. You know, there's a lot of mortgage companies out there, a lot of mortgage brokers out there, a lot of realtors out there, right? So everybody knows a realtor, right? You know, so there's a lot of access to, you know, it's very easy to get a conversation started with someone in the industry that can help guide you on what the next steps are and where you stand. You know, it's I don't know. It's really just I think one thing that definitely holds people back though is kind of that commitment, right? You know, going back to the decision on it. I mean, you know, there's something about, oh, I'm gonna call a loan officer, and you know, it's like, what is that commitment? You know, I mean, we say to people, all the time, you know, there's, you know, buying a home is not you know, so much a yes or no as a when, right?
Right. When are you going to buy?
Right. And, you know, if you get that conversation started with someone, even if you're not thinking about buying like immediately, right? You know, get that conversation started with somebody. It opens up a dialogue,
Yeah.
you know,
It's never too early.
Yeah. Communication line, and gets you kind of pointed in the right direction. And then when everything lines up and you're ready to pull the trigger, you can move quick.
Awesome. Well, I think we've covered it. I think it's time to wrap it up. If you are still watching, thank you very much. We appreciate you tuning in, and hope that you were engaged, entertained, and most of all, that you learned something and that you got some value from this as far as helping you if you're one of those people that's kind of weighing the options on whether or not you should buy or continue to rent. Hope that this helped you make a decision one way or another. So thank you very much for tuning in, and we'll see you next week.
We're gonna get some nice stuff going here. We're gonna, you know, this is a pretty big overview on some topics, but you know, we're gonna get a little granular into some fun stuff. So I'm looking forward to it.
Me too, man.
All right, cool.
All right.